Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the Director of Athletic Performance at Buena Vista University. Today's guest is Josh Q. Josh, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
For sure, my man. So, Josh, we're just going to jump right into what I like to call the conversational warm-up questions. I've got 4 questions I kind of like to start all of the podcast conversations off with. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yes, I do. It's been a little bit different, obviously due to the circumstances here within the last 6 weeks, so I'll kind of go over a little bit of both.
Cool, yeah.
Right now, what I do is when I get up, I weigh myself, what I do there is just kind of take the average for the week. I got some goals that I'm trying to do in terms of body composition and things like that, so it's some good data that I'm trying to do with nutrition plan and that. What I do right away is I eat breakfast, like a good meal in first. Following that, I walk the dog, which I think during these circumstances, they might be the real winners here. They're getting a lot of exercise.
Yeah,
I see a lot
sure.
of people out there. He's going to be, when people got to go back to work, the dogs are going to be, a little upset. I don't think they're going to stand.
Sure.
And then I train generally in the morning. After that, or if it's a non-training day, I might just read about some training and things like that, get my mind going before, kind of sip on the Rain or Monster to get ready and then
For sure.
train there. Now, when I work for strength and conditioning, I get in there around 5 or 5:15. I kind of changed it up actually this last semester because I want a little bit of a slower start and get my mind right for the day, so I got in there a little bit earlier. I would eat breakfast at work. Go over the workout, what I had, a little bit of my morning schedule, kind of get my mind right. Then I would go set up whatever I have to do for that day, whether it was speed, conditioning, or an agility work when we start off the workout, and then it was come back in, take attendance, kind of chat it up with the guys, see how they're feeling before we would go for that 6 a.m. workout. We always have a 6 a.m. group in there, whether pending on the season, football was in this last spring semester. So.
Okay, cool. Now, something I want to touch on, and we're not going to get into the kind of all the COVID stuff today, but just for you personally, because I know for myself personally, Josh, like I kind of like that routine, and I really thrive within routine, and then playing sports and bodybuilding and powerlifting, all the kind of that physical culture. There's a lot of progress to be made within kind of that routine, right? Mm-hmm. So for you, has it been kind of tough to kind of be in the grind of strength and conditioning and being around the student athletes and coaching and all that, and then kind of having to step out of that because of the situation, the circumstance that we're in, and kind of having to reformulate your morning routine? Has that been kind of hard for you, or has it been a pretty easy transition?
I would say it was kind of an easy transition, really. I think working longer hours and a lot, it was kind of a nice little break. When this thing happened, we were going into spring break anyway, so we knew that we had 2 weeks off right away at least, and I just kind of took some time to relax a little bit and just not be so rigid and planned out all the time. And obviously, you just kind of fall back into what you've been trained for the last 10 or 12 years. So, I am a lot more strict about training and when you eat, and you just kind of fall into those patterns. But it was nice at the beginning, I would like to say, to just kind of just live and not be stuck to looking at your watch every 10 minutes going, all right, well, I got to be here. I got these guys coming in. We got to get this workout done. So, these guys got to be off the platforms or what, So it was kind of nice, honestly.
Cool. Awesome. All right, kind of the next question in terms of the warm-up questions, Josh. Do you have a favorite book? Is there a book that you're currently reading, or maybe a book that you like to gift often? If you want to answer all 3 of those, 1 of those, 2 of those, however you kind of want to take that, just feel free to share.
Yeah, the books I'm currently reading right now, I like the Jocko. Obviously, I think a lot of people is big into strength and conditioning. Yeah, so I bounce around between his 3 books, Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy of Leadership, and then he's got his training manual, and then there's a new one out that's on the way. I can't wait for it, The Code. Yep. I've been listening to some of his podcasts about that now, and I'm itching to get ready. I like those books from a kind of a leadership standpoint, and then I really like Jim Wendler's Forever 531 book. For me, it really helped me kind of simplify training in my head. There's got to be some give and take in training. You can't just sit here and try to get a guy stronger, faster, and in great condition, all at once. There's got to be certain, times where you emphasize all of them. And even in my training too, and it's like, what are you trying to get some volume in? You want to get stronger. There's certain times where you got to kind of push one and pull back from that. So, and it just simplifies it for me. I think sometimes people try to just do everything at once. Absolutely. Rather than like, all right, let's focus on speed this 6 weeks. Focus on just putting on some muscle mass, and not to say that you're not trying to get stronger or faster all the time, but there's just certain times where volumes have to coexist rather than that's when people get hurt, when you try to master everything at once.
Cool. Okay, so I want to touch on and dig a little bit deeper into Jocko, because in the past, not so much anymore, but in the past, I've read several of his books: Extreme Ownership, Discipline Equals Freedom. I actually ordered, when I was a physical education teacher in Colorado, I ordered his first kids book. I mean, he's got a whole line of kids books out, man. Yep. And I ordered some of those kids books and things for some of the students. So in the past, I've listened to his podcasts, and I've really gained a lot of just value through Jocko and just kind of his message, which overall is discipline equals freedom, right? So for you, maybe it is the discipline equals freedom, but just kind of overall, if you can kind of sum it up, what's just a takeaway or two from Jocko Willink that you really appreciate and that you've been able, Josh, to apply maybe to your personal life, but then also to your professional life as well?
I think it's just that you're in control of your own life.
Absolutely.
Like I would do that too when I was younger. So, you just kind of look at somebody else maybe, or I know a lot in this social media realm, everybody looks at the snapshots of Instagram. Well, that's the 10 seconds great of their life, but you know what? You can make your life into that too. Now, obviously, you've got to show some discipline and work hard, and there's certain things that you got to sacrifice to give up, but to be there. But I know there was a lot of people out there during these times that didn't get to lift at a gym, and that's always something that I kind of wanted to work towards. And me and Karen have a little home gym here that we've continued to kind of build in this, and it's nice that that's a big chunk of my life, and training has been, and we can still be able to do that
for sure.
Actually, maybe not lifting as much weight as we would want to because we don't have it, but we're still able to get that done like 4 or 5 days a week. And there has been certain time where I've accumulated bars and things like different equipment over time, but at the same time, we made other sacrifices that maybe we didn't go out to eat for a couple of different weeks, or didn't go party, or maybe we didn't go on a cool vacation all the time, and that you worked a few extra hours, or just kind of was bored at home to be able to afford it, and
of course
put your money where you want to, and that's what's going to make you happy. So
cool. The whole when I started to kind of come across Jocko's podcasts and his writings, that whole thing of discipline equals freedom, it just once you actually let it sink in and kind of meditate on it, or think about it however you want to word that, it just completely makes sense. Financially, personally, in terms of relationships, professionally, it just either you're gonna pay now or you're gonna pay later. You know what I mean? Either you're gonna be disciplined now or you're gonna suffer later. That's just the reality of life, So cool. All right. Is there a favorite quote, mantra, or word that you have? Again, if there's maybe a word, if there's a quote, if you want to share more than one, just however you want to take that, feel free.
Yeah, it was a quote. I believe it's from the Navy SEALs. Now, I'm not sure if it's word for word or kind of summed up, but it says, when under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. Train well.
Yeah.
I actually was able to get that over my desk in my office at my previous job, and that was, kind of lets you know, like, it's how you do anything is how you do everything.
100%.
And like when I was talking to kids about training, just be consistent. And I would rather, I think everybody, again, go back to social media. They want to, put what they max or, like the great training days. But there's a lot of just average training days accumulated over time that nobody really knows about. And that's what me personally, what I liked about strength and conditioning is like, we were talking about the basement weight room. Like, hey, nobody knows what's going on until for 8 weeks, all of a sudden these guys are monsters, that was what was cool, I think, back in the 90s when Westside Barbell, there's a lot of stories that nobody knows about. That there's a mystique to it. So I think that that's just the way you train. If you don't miss reps, don't miss sets, don't skip things, hold each other accountable. Perfect, if you're supposed to sprint, run, try to win every rep. And then when you go out to the field, you line up across that guy, from that, your opponent, you have that same mindset and mentality. And that's pretty much what strength and conditioning is, I think, in and of itself. It's just building a powerful mindset. And you have to do that, but just do it every single day, consistent over and over with attacking a rep. So we're gonna get into all things strength and conditioning here as we continue our conversation. But you brought up mindset, and something that I had written down to ask you if the conversation went in that direction, and it kind of did, was how have athletes changed over the years, right? And that's something, I mean, we're about 4 years apart, I think, in age, but just even myself, like there seems to be like a change of just how kids are, right? And I'm in my early 30s. I think you're in your late 30s. Like, we're still young guys, right? But how do you kind of address the change maybe that you've seen over the years in terms of kids, student athletes, how you kind of have to approach them, coach them, right? And how do you kind of like incorporate the mindset within the strength and conditioning? Because a lot of kids, we're here in Iowa, the high school strength and conditioning programs, they're getting a lot better. They've come a long ways. I'm from Cherokee, which is 20 miles from here in Storm Lake. We had an awesome strength and conditioning program growing up, but a lot of kids still in some of these smaller towns, they maybe never even picked up a barbell, right? So they're coming to BV to play football, and they walk in day one, and you kind of have to, start with them. And then you've got the kids that are maybe coming from a bigger program in one of the bigger cities like Des Moines, something like that, right? How do you then kind of like, coach that mindset? How do you attack, or how do you approach mindset when the kids stepping in are like, they think they're there just to lift weights, right? And try to, max out their bench press or their squat. How do you work that mindset into your coaching? And then kind of just tying that into how you've seen kids change over the years, and maybe how you've had to maybe change your philosophy in terms of coaching and reaching those kids, those student athletes. Yeah, I think it just comes to educating kids a lot about your program. And I think they have to know the reason why they're doing what they're doing. And I mean, there's a lot more educated people out there, and obviously they're going to see how the pros train and how all the big time D1 programs train, and sometimes like those are different people. Like I was fortunate enough to work in professional baseball and minor league baseball, and I saw some of the best players in baseball. Well, like they were blessed a little bit with some certain things to be able to throw 95 without even touching any weights. So there's just certain reasons. It's all goes back to just educating the kids. They got to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I probably need to do a better job of that. Every single day. And you just got to get them to do it consistently. Right, I think when freshmen come in, they think like, hey, I'll just show up. If I'm just in the weight room, I should get better.
Right,
and then, it's like, well, yeah, you're going to be a little sore. You got to do it again the next day. Well, maybe take it a step further. All right, let's sleep. Yeah. So now you got to be like, all right, let's train hard one day, sleep enough so your body can recover, and then you can come back the next day and have another good day.
For sure.
And you can stack good days on top of days and weeks on top of weeks and then months. So I think it really comes down to education and just, winning those little battles. And there's certain teams in sports that essentially maybe want to do too much or lift too heavy, and it's not what you can do, it's what you can recover from. So it's all just a mindset of being consistent and let's do it like 52 weeks out of the year, and then imagine what you're like in.
For sure.
I think people underestimate or overestimate what they can do in a short term and underestimate what they could do. Like let's look at this like as a 4-year plan, and not just what I can do from week to week.
Right.
And they'll just consistency.
Now, like again, in terms of like the mindset aspect of things, Josh. Like, do you like actually talk to your student athletes about mindset, or is it more just kind of like, incorporated in terms of like just the training? Is it something they kind of pick up after they've been at BV for maybe, a year or two? Or do you actually kind of like approach the student athletes and talk to them, at different times about just the mindset, how they're thinking and things like that? Just I want to hear your thoughts on that a little bit.
Some of that just kind of comes to with what the head coach wants. I know on the football end, like, hey, he wants to be competitive. He wants things competitive. So that kind of comes with, all right, let's start the day with a competition. They're divided up into teams throughout this thing. So that's what they want to do. And there's certain times where we're in. Like we're doing bench or squats, that hey, you're going to compete with the guys next to you or the guys that's in your group, and we'll kind of do an AMRAP at the end and see who gets the most reps at a certain weight. So it's just having a competitive mindset, wanting to compete with each other, pushing that guy next to you. Yeah. And also there's a mindset of discipline, like you should be there 5 minutes early every single day, right? So that's what we push to do. There's a certain dress code. You're at Buena Vista University. You're not wearing anybody else. Right. You're wearing the right colors. You're wearing the right gear, and those are things that are expected. Right. And there might be one or two people that can't follow that. Then there's consequences. So
because I went to Central and played a year of football there, and the strength and conditioning coach at the time, Coach Anderson, he's overseas now, and they're missionaries and stuff, doing awesome work for the faith and everything, but. Just you talking, man, like it's bringing back a lot of memories, because there's a lot of things where it's like you step in the weight room, man, you're wearing Central gear. If anybody, just some of the exact same terminology, But it's so important, I think, because and again, going back to how the times have kind of changed, kids have changed. We have the YouTube now. We can see how all the professional athletes are training, and we're all trying to wear our Nike and Under Armour, all this stuff. I think it is really important when a student athlete steps into the weight room or steps, onto the practice football field, what have you, like, that discipline and that unity, like, it's no longer Quentin Vars and Josh Q. It's, it's BV football. It's BV strength and conditioning. Like, either you're like, there's a purpose, like there's a reason why you're here. Yes, you're here to get great grades and get a great education, but when you're in the weight room, when you're on the football practice field, when you're on the basketball court, like, there's a very specific purpose. I think it's important for, somebody like you, a strength and conditioning coach, a football coach, to really, with some of these younger kids, kind of like, just shake them a little bit, like, hey, like, this isn't high school anymore. Because I remember Coach Anderson, I came down to Pella before the football season started and everything. We're doing some conditioning, and supposedly, I didn't finish a sprint hard. Oh, man. Yeah. Dude, he just ripped me so hard. He's like, Vars, he's like, this isn't high school football anymore. And I'm 19 years old, think I'm, the biggest gift to earth and everything, like a lot of us do at that age. And, it was embarrassing and it was humbling, but it's just like, hey, like, this isn't high school anymore, man. Like, you're a college athlete. It's something different. So I think that's really important, that you try to really say, hey, like, there's a purpose here. Discipline's important. There needs to be that unity. It's important for those kids to get conditioned in that mindset right away. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think with social media and Twitter, you recruit kids on there, and they all want to they get a lot of attention from
Of course.
coaches, and the job of the strength coach when those kids comes in is like, now you have to take all that individualism and attention that they've all gotten because everybody wants them in recruiting, and it's a big, it inflates your ego. Like people, you got coaches from different schools calling you. You want to come here, there. You step on campus, they give you some free gear, and then now it's like, okay, you're nobody. What you've done nothing here.
Yep.
And you don't want to be blunt or say like, hey, you can't help us out, but at the same time, you haven't done anything, so let's follow the rules.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
there is a little bit more, I think, individualism. You can kind of see people out there, like wearing, lighter, brighter colored shoes and things like that.
Oh,
and I'll be honest, like when I was in high school, maybe it was just me. I wouldn't even think,
Right.
No, we really think to like just do something to stand out.
For sure.
Like everybody's like, hey, we want to. Okay, we're all wearing tall socks today. All right, we're all wearing ankle. Like mid calf, whatever. So, yeah, that's kind of your job as the strength and conditioning coach. Say, all right, they like everybody's been really nice to them, smiles, and now they come out there and you got to tell the kid like, hey, you know what, like those handshakes and backslaps are over. It's time to.
The everybody that's listening to this right now, they can't see your facial expressions, but I can just kind of see just like the strength and conditioning coaches right there, man. Like, because I've been behind the scenes. One of my good friends in high school, and we went to college together and stuff. He's he was at Washington State for the last several years. Okay. He's down at Mississippi State, I believe now, and I've talked to him and. I mean, it's just a different world, right? And if you're not in that world, as a strength and conditioning coach, you just like anything else, you don't really get it. But just being an athlete so many years ago, and just seeing you talk, it's bringing back some some funny memories and good memories, But it's cool, man. Like I just think there's a great purpose for that strength and conditioning coach on a college campus or on a sports team. Like, I mean, because from my understanding, it's like. The more that I've learned, like the strength and conditioning coach, like at different times of the year, you guys have more access than anybody else to these student athletes. Isn't that correct? Because like the football coaches and the head coaches of the different athletic teams, I mean, because of different NCAA regulations, like they're limited at different times throughout the year to see their student athletes, but you guys kind of get to see them year round. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's certain discretionary periods where you can't, but even more so at the Division III level because they do get a little bit of spring practice and it's not in pads and it can't really be too competitive. So you have to you have to be able to get that competition in other areas with the strength and conditioning. Now I know at the Division I level and when I was at Division II, they were able to get 2 hours. I want to say. After the recruiting, the signing period there in February, so the coaches could meet with them and work with them. But it's in January they're all out recruiting. It's just and I'll be honest, when I first got my job working in the football office at my previous institution, I was just football and it was just me in there some nights. Like I felt like I was the only one like everybody else was out recruiting, and so it was just me with 100 football players. And, I mean, they're during the summer, when you're there in the summer months, they can't touch them. Now, I think at the Division I level, you're able to get a couple of hours of meeting time and maybe some individual time there too. That's a little bit of a different beast.
Yeah,
they kind of
for sure.
Makes they get a lot more practice time and things like that. But I mean, there's really no times that in the competitive season, in season, out of season, or whatnot that we're really limited other than.
Yep, you guys definitely play a crucial role. Okay, we'll get more into strength and conditioning here in a little bit, but just to kind of wrap up the warm up questions here, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast, Josh?
Yeah, the Massonomics podcast.
Okay, cool. Yep, I've heard of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. What's kind of something? What's the gist of that podcast for those that maybe aren't familiar with it? What's something you kind of like take away from it when you listen to it?
It's. Honestly, they talk a lot about the current issues in lifting. They'll touch on that. They do a lot of like pop culture stuff and just current events. Maybe what's good on Netflix or talk a little bit about that. And It's based out of North Dakota, or no, South Dakota.
Oh, okay,
Aberdeen,
perfect,
South
yeah.
Dakota. So what I started listening to it actually when I was in North Carolina, and I was like, hey, a couple of fellow Midwest guys, they kind of have the dry sense of humor. It's a lighter podcast, which is nice. I like Jocko's. But when I'm going on a walk, sometimes it's to clear your mind, and you're listening to Jocko, and all of a sudden I can feel my heart going like it's like I'm working again. So,
right, for sure.
But I like the Massonomics. They kind of keep it light. They keep it, they talk about some things they lifted before. They put up some good numbers in that, and
Awesome.
they actually have some clothing line that's lifting. Like a beer parody shirt, so it might be like a Busch Light logo with a bench heavy on it.
Okay, yeah.
So it's pretty cool. That's kind of where I got to listen to them after seeing that. So
good deal. All right, Josh. So we're gonna kind of transition into your backstory. So I would love for you, if you don't mind, to share with myself and the listeners, kind of like where did you grow up? What did those younger years look like? I'm assuming sports, athletics was a huge part of that upbringing. But just talk about maybe the family a little bit. If you have any siblings, again, where you grew up, what the younger years look like, kind of up to about high school, and then we'll kind of stop there, and then we'll transition from there.
All right, so I grew up in Fairbank, Iowa.
Okay.
Super small town.
Where's that at? What part of the state? I've never heard of it, I don't think.
So it's about 30 minutes northeast of Waterloo, Cedar Falls.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's about a 2.5 hour drive, I'd say, from here.
Okay.
No, actually, when I visited BV.
Okay.
Coming out of high, when I was getting recruited and that, then there was about a 3-hour drive here on Highway 3, but now they got 20, so it's a lot easier to get to. But so Fairbank, Iowa, grew up with a lot of the same kids, that I would graduate with. I love sports in that my dad was my, Little League baseball coach all the way up. He was actually my high school baseball coach for a year before he got a different job. So, he loved baseball. I loved, we had a very active neighborhood, so to speak. Like a lot of kids were around my age. We'd always play pickup baseball, football, basketball games and that. And, I always loved the sports. And, my dad said, hey, you got to have to work at it if you want to be good. You can't just be a couch potato. So he eventually bought me a weight set in middle school. We weren't very good in football. So once I started training a little bit, we started getting a little bit better. I kind of had a shift. I really loved basketball at first, and then, started playing football at varsity as a sophomore, and that, led me into, more football. We got a weight room going into my senior year after my junior year, so I just, that's when I kind of fell in love with it. We were real diligent with it, and, we're in the playoffs a couple of years. And
cool. Okay.
So
now, how big of a community is Fairbank then?
It's 1,000 people.
Okay, yeah. So Cherokee's 5, so that's pretty small.
Yeah.
Then.
Now there's, the high school is Wapsie Valley.
Okay.
So we have a couple of towns. Now there would have been 2 elementaries in Fairbank and Reedland, and then there's a really smaller town, Oran's, probably like 250.
Okay.
So
yeah, those are all places I've never heard of. So.
Yeah, it's over there on the east side of the state, over there, not too far from Waterloo.
Okay, cool. Now, in terms of kind of like, football specifically, right? Because football's big everywhere. It's really big in Iowa too, and that's something that really shaped my younger years is once I started playing football. But what was it kind of about football? Was it just maybe like the release of aggression? Was it kind of the team aspect, the camaraderie? What was it specifically about football you feel, Josh, was kind of different than maybe the baseball, the basketball for you in terms of sports in your childhood?
Well, I would say it kind of was a little bit to let out some aggression. I'm an introvert by nature, like being a strength coach is a little out of my, I kind of have to get into character more or less. Yeah. So, I guess this pandemic kind of has been cool because it feeds right into me a little bit, but just kind of, high school, there's just a different, you got to kind of find out who you are, which crowd you're going to hang out with, and that. And I always had good friends and a good upbringing with my parents, and that was just, a chance for me to kind of put on a helmet and shoulder pads, and now you're just a different dude that, you don't have to talk to anybody, or, you have to kind of perform or, be somebody you're not. I guess you can just kind of let it go and just run around and hit somebody for 2 hours and take out whatever happened at school or whatever's going on in your life. So
that's cool. Now you're a taller dude. So were you pretty big and pretty tall like throughout high school? Did you hit a growth spurt at some point? Or
I want to say I hit a growth spurt. I think my freshman year. So I got to be 6'1". I was always kind of a fat, pudgy kid from maybe elementary school on up through junior high, and then I did hit a little bit of a growth spurt, but I was able to gain weight, in high school. Probably not the best. It would have been nice had a strength coach been there to make it be a little bit better. But once it was awesome. I mean, we had my own weight set there and in middle school that my dad bought, and then I remember lifting going after my sophomore year. We were on like a universal machine, so it was really like 4 stations. There was like a bench press, a leg press, a lat pull down, and we'd go in there with me and one of my friends or before school, and we didn't really know what we were doing. But it was just kind of something to do.
That's awesome. Cool. Now, is there anything, and then we'll kind of transition from the younger years, but as you look back kind of like on your childhood or kind of think about those years, was there a struggle? Was there anything that you kind of had to you look back and you kind of had to overcome? I know for me, there was some anxiety that kind of started at when I was younger. Is there anything that you kind of think of, or you look back and just say, man, that was a difficult season of life. That was a difficult time of life. That was something I really had to overcome, kind of had to fight through, had to figure out. Or was it pretty smooth in those younger years?
No, it's pretty smooth, I guess.
Okay, cool.
My parents split up when I was going into high school. Okay. And just being from a small town, a lot of people, in your school district are the same, so then you're kind of looking around like, am I the only one that's? And that was probably the big thing for me. It's like, oh, geez, I'm the only one with, there was a few other kids that they kind of pointed out. Well, so there was actually a kid that was in my class that I kind of ended up being really good friends with by the end of high school that his parents were split up too. So, I mean, that kind of was something you're just, in a small town, you're like, well, nobody else is like me now. I'm the outcast, and that's because everybody's, small town, working class, middle class. Everybody's kind of, there's no outliers. It's not like there's any homeless people. There's no overly rich people. Excuse me. So, that was kind of one thing. You're like, oh, now I'm the outlier, and maybe cause a little bit of frustration or whatnot that. Turned out maybe help you on the football field, but so.
Any siblings or anything, Josh?
I do have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me.
Awesome.
And then I do have 3 stepbrothers. So my dad remarried, and there's 2 older than 1 younger. So
cool. All right, good deal, my man. Okay, let's talk about because I looked I did a little research on you like I do with all my guests just to kind of find out a little bit more. So I'm not coming in this completely blind. So I know you ended up at Northern Iowa University, but let's just talk about, because I think there were some stops before that, so let's just talk about post high school, kind of what did those first few years look like. Let's talk, I know you played football in college and things like that, so let's just kind of unpack the college years, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, I went to Waldorf College.
Okay.
Currently, right now, it's a 4-year institution, NAI. Now, when I went there, it was junior college.
Okay.
But they were working towards becoming a 4-year. So, I'd always had a dream. The University of Northern Iowa was always about 40 minutes away. Both my parents graduated from there. I grew up going to football games there, and I really loved, the institution and, watching the games. That was my goal. So that's why I went to JUCO. I was like, well, I guess the reason I went to college mainly was probably because of football.
Of course, yeah.
I remember when I was getting recruited, and then I was going in the, working for my dad in the summer, and somebody asked me, well, where are you going to go there? And he's like, I'm going to go play football. And they're like, well, what are you going to study? And I was like, oh, it didn't really, like... I was study football, right? I was not very good. At academics, and it wasn't that I wasn't good, maybe so much as I didn't apply myself, and it didn't come easy for me. To where my sister, she reads a lot of books. She's very intelligent, so it was like it kind of came a little bit more natural to her, and she was gonna, you know, she had big plans like that. But me, it was like, I'm just going to go play football.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
it wasn't until I played there for 3 semesters.
Okay.
They said they were going to go 4-year to NAI, and I was like, well, I don't want to be here for 4 years.
Right.
I wanted to come here and try to earn a scholarship somewhere. Wasn't able to do it, so I just walked on at Northern Iowa.
Okay.
You know, it was kind of a dream of mine. If you watch like Rudy or the movie Great,
Yeah.
So I love those movies because that was me there.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, I literally just walked in there, talked to one of the coaches. They threw me into the weightlifting groups. Eventually, I had to lift at 6 a.m. every day, and they didn't even know who I was, but eventually they did. So it was in that semester, and actually playing football too, that I didn't realize that you could be a strength coach. You know, like you could do that and get paid for it, which, I mean, it blew my mind. I couldn't, you know, because I don't like to run, but I love to lift. But I knew that in the summer there was some part of like, it's hot, you got to go out there and run and get ready for the season. And there was some part of me that just loved to do that, and I wanted to help, you know, kids do that too.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Get ready for that August day. Like, so that's kind of when I knew, and I started taking classes there to get into strength and conditioning. I kind of took an intro to a couple of different ones, and strength and conditioning was one. So that's kind of where it went. I walked on the team for 2 years. I never stepped foot on the field, but I was there at lifting and practice, and I was a reliable guy. So I kind of got some respect, and then I was able to intern and GA at UNI as well under Coach Smith, and he's done a great job there. I learned a lot from him. You know, we had some good years. You know, as runner up 1 year to Appalachian State back when they were 1AA, and then you know, we were ranked number 1 year, had, you know, undefeated, and Joe Flacco beat us out, and then but it was a good run, and it was a good time. I enjoyed my time there.
Cool.
In college.
Yeah, UNI's a legit school. My dad's actually from Waverly.
Okay.
Graduated from Waverly Shell Rock, so we'd go over there to the other side of the state, right, to see my grandparents. So I grew up going to UNI basketball camps as a kid, and been on campus. It's a great school, and the football program. They're it's a legit program. It's a great, really great program, because I think they play against like SDSU and USD, right?
Yep,
kind
of
of that division.
Yeah, they're in the same with North
That's
Dakota State and
okay.
South Dakota State. So
very competitive.
It's a really good league. Now, back when I was there, it wasn't quite as competitive, but Western Kentucky was in there, and Southern Illinois were really good teams, and now Western Kentucky's bumped up. Youngstown was better, and now, you know, those Dakota schools that have come in there, it's, you know, they kind of, I hate to say taken over, because I you know, love UNI, and still I'm still a diehard. You know, like I follow them through the, you know, every game in the playoffs and that as much as I can. So it's a competitive conference. It's a, you know, every week is a grind. It's a battle. It's a battle.
What's a kind of a takeaway or two from just, let's narrow it down to those couple years that you walked on at UNI. What are a couple takeaways from those couple of years from UNI? You know, just like, you know, kind of showing up and saying, hey, like I want to do this. You know, obviously you finished it through. You didn't quit. What are a couple of things that you just look back and say, man, like I'm proud that I did that, or this was a great lesson that I learned during those 2 years?
Yeah, well, first of all, being a walk-on, I was a scholarship guy in junior college, so I kind of saw both sides of the story when, you know, like, hey, they're putting money into you. Now you get more of the reps. You're like the first guy picked to go out there and run with the ones the first couple of days of practice. Then you go be a walk-on, and nobody really knows you, and you're the last guy. And even you might have performed in a better in a drill than the scholarship guy. When he's still going to get more opportunities than you. Right. And you know, like now you're lifting at 6 a.m. with a bunch of other walk-ons that the strength coach literally just walked up to me, gave us the program, and then left. He didn't even coach us. So we had to figure out like what a power clean was, what a power snatch. And then, you know, like you're kind of thrust into the conditioning after, what is that, the signing day. So then we were able to compete with everybody, but it was winter morning runs at 6 a.m.
Right,
Tuesday,
right.
Thursday, and Saturday. So it was like, jeez, we were up like 4 or 5 days a week at 6 a.m. and they really kind of tested your mettle.
Yeah.
And now being a strength coach, to me, it's like, well, I've already done it. It's easy now. I get paid to do it. Then I wasn't getting paid. You had to walk over there in the snow and the cold, and there's a lot of days you're like, I just want to turn back around, but you still want to play. So it's just being consistent and persevering, and like the odds are against you, and that's why like being a walk-on, I think it's cool that everybody should kind of have to be put in their shoes for a little bit just to see like what because you're gonna get your medal's gonna be tested every single day, and then you're on scout team and you have to run the other team's plays. Well, the varsity guys are bigger and stronger than you, and if they're getting their tail whooped, and the head coaches or their position coach is yelling at them, then they're yelling at you, pushing you down, and they don't care whether you're getting the coaches don't care whether you're getting stomped on or whatnot. And there was a year there where I remember you and we started off real bad. We played a lot of tough teams, and we're like 1-4, and practice just wasn't very fun because everybody was just. When you're losing, things aren't going well, and then it was like, the coaches would, yell at the other, the starters, and the starters would just take it out on us, and you're just kind of a punching bag there, and you just gotta, try your best to give it back to them. So it's just grit and
of course,
just persevere. And there's low days, but there's gonna be better days too. And then the next year we were really good, and that was a blast to like. Just go through like we were like a 7-game win streak. It felt like we couldn't be beaten. Yeah. Everybody was, everybody was in better spirits, and you're in a week of practice where you're, one win and 60 minutes away from a national championship, and that's not a lot of people can say that they were in a practice for playing a national championship game. So it was a blast. It was fun.
Cool. Now just kind of like your perspective, Josh, in terms of like scholarship athlete and then being a walk-on, does that give you I don't probably the word sympathy probably isn't the right word in our conversation with a strength and conditioning coach, but does that kind of give you a little bit better maybe understanding with some of your student athletes that step into the weight room and you have interactions with maybe they're going through something tough at home, or maybe they were at a different school like I was, and then you transfer in. I mean, there's a lot, and then we've brought up social media, and there's just so much. I mean, there's this social media addiction with these younger kids. I mean, you have to tell them to put their phone away for an hour in the weight room.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, that's hard for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Which we kind of roll our eyes at that, but it's the facts. It's the truth. So just your experiences in football in college with the scholarship and then the walk-on, does that kind of help you maybe better relate to some of your student athletes now as a coach?
Oh, I definitely think it does. I mean, I've kind of seen both sides of it. Now at BV, nobody's on an athletic scholarship, so everybody's pretty much equal. At my previous institution at D2, there were scholarship kids and there weren't. And you kind of have to explain to them, like, I mean, if you want it, you got to do just a little bit like you got to kind of show up and prove to us that you're worthy of that. And sometimes we're more worthy than scholarship guys. I mean, that always happens. But I think too, as a strength coach, you're kind of looked at as the meathead and the disciplinarian and that. So especially when I was a position coach. Just even now too, but like you're just there for your players. Like sometimes after a workout, they just want to talk to you for 15 or 20 minutes. And I think that is a huge kind of nobody really talks about, but you're just the person that if you just listen to them, and this, I mean, just talk to them. There was a lot of great days where we had, there wasn't a lot of stuff to do around town, and some guys were there in the summer, and we just sit out there and they drink their muscle milks and we talk for 30 minutes. And I think that builds camaraderie and culture, and you don't have to, and it's not even forced. I think sometimes culture is a huge buzzword in it, and it would be nice if it just happened like organically, where guys would just sit out there after practice with their pads on and just talk. And like that was something cool that we would do, or even before meetings. I remember there was a player of mine that I don't think he really blended in with some of the guys on the team. I was in charge of running backs and tight ends, and there's some egos and
Of course.
prima donnas, and he didn't really fit into that. He was a little bit more of a meathead and quieter guy, and he'd come by 30, 45 minutes before, a meeting, and we'd just sit there and talk, and I think that was enough to kind of make him feel like he was a part of it, and, he was, wanted and things like that. And I think if you just sit there and listen and just have a conversation with kids, and, after a nice hard lift, they just sit out there and sip a Gatorade or a muscle milk or one night, talk to them, and then it shows that you're kind of a human being as well. I think that that goes a long way towards, you talk about like culture and mental toughness and things like, hey, if they care about you, they're going to try harder for you.
Absolutely.
And I believe that's like something with the Army too. It's like, hey, they don't, fight against who's in front of you. You fight because you care about the guys behind you. And that's,
right.
If you care about somebody like that, where you just, and those culture things aren't like forced, and you have to kind of do these trust falls and stuff like that. But it's, it's like a real conversation where I actually care about where the guy's from, or like, what he's been through, So.
No, that's powerful, man. That's insightful, because we all kind of get caught up in the rat race of life, and the grind of what we got to do, and just like even being like a school teacher, because as adults, like sometimes we lose that childhood, right? We kind of lose that childhood perspective, and especially if you're into fitness and powerlifting and bodybuilding and lifting weights, you're just kind of focused on yourself and what you've got to do. You get very regimented, and just kind of get the blinders on, and that's how a lot of us adults are. And then it's like, I was like, at my first semester at the school in Colorado Springs, I was a elementary PE teacher. Dude, like, I had kindergartners, like they don't even know how to tie their shoe. And you're an adult, you're trying to pay your bills and this and that, and then you got this little kid that just comes up and will, hug my leg, and it catches you off guard, especially as kind of like a man's man, like I'm like rough and gruff or whatever. You got this little hi Mr. Q, and give you a hug. You, like, at first it's like you don't even know what to do. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just like that is a great point, Josh, and I'm really glad that you shared that in terms of like just listening to one of your student athletes for 20 minutes after a session or after a practice, just giving them an opportunity to see you as a human being, not just a guy that's yelling at them or busting their balls or whatever. It's like, no, like, hey, like, I'm here for you. And I think even just like saying that, hey, like, if you ever need to talk, because I would do that with some of my older students, in the whole group setting, it's just like, hey, like, I'm going to push you in PE class, and I'm going to, this and this and that or whatever, but I'm always here for you. Like, if you ever need to talk to anybody, like, I'm here. And I would just verbalize that, because, again, as kids, we look at teachers, we look at coaches, we look at adults. There's just a different lens, right? And then we lose that childhood as we get older, and it's just kind of a weird thing. But once you step back into being around kids again, you kind of like, man, like, you look back on your child and say, man, like, I went, my parents got divorced, or this happened, and that was really hard for me. And then you kind of start seeing these kids go through those things, and then it kind of it helps you be maybe more compassionate, a little bit more humble. But I just think that's really awesome that you shared that. That's very insightful. It's just like, hey, having some conversations with kids, like, that goes a long ways, especially, again, going back to the social media. Everybody's trying to fit in. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be liked, especially when you're playing sports. It's all about, like, what are you doing for me today in this performance? And it's okay as a strength coach or a rough dude, however you want to word it. Just say, like, hey, like, I'm here for you if you need to talk. Come to my office anytime. I'll listen. You know what I mean? I think that's really powerful. And like you said, that builds that camaraderie, and that goes a long way. Because we've all had the different coaches where it's yelling and yelling and yelling and cussing, and just you never see the side where it's like, hey, like, but I'm here for you. Because that can really, and I found this out being a teacher, it's like, you're yelling, you're raising your voice, like, that can, for some kids, that can really drive them away. You know what I mean?
Does, yeah.
It's needed. That discipline's needed. Raising your voice every once in a while is needed, all that different stuff, but it's also needed, those kids need to hear, like, I'm here for you, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that's I think there's been a few situations where, I've stepped into that they weren't very successful the year before, and it was like a coaches versus players. He's yelling at me because, they don't know what they're talking about, and there's back and forth to where you can kind of break down that wall and be like, well, yeah, I'm going to yell at you, but that's for the best of you. Absolutely. So if you can kind of show them that you're a human being, I think that's the big thing, and just show them that you're like a real person. But so yeah, I mean, there's you don't know too how somebody's raised.
Absolutely.
Like that might have been how they were growing up, and they might have been in a situation that wasn't great. I mean, the previous institution I was at, there was a lot of kids that were came from tough backgrounds, like not very good. And for me to be from Iowa, where we everybody was pretty much the same, to go into that, it was like, whoa, like how do I, it's tough to relate to. But again, that I was just kind of my way of doing it was just, being some guy that they could talk to and showing that I'm actually a human being, and that, I'm not a drill sergeant, and we're going to run this stuff, and it might seem a little crazy, but at the end of the day, it's to make us better, and I'm going to give you a pat on the back and say you did good, or, tell you if I think there's more out of you, then I'm thinking more out of you, but, I'm doing it for the best for you.
Love it, yeah.
And so...
Cool. Okay, so I want to kind of continue in terms of like just your story, your journey, right? So you're at UNI now. Did you? Because I know at different colleges, there's kind of some different terminology. But was it like exercise science, kinesiology? What was like actually the major that you studied in college then?
It was exercise science, to say the least. I think actually on the certificate for my bachelor's and my master's, it was something a little bit more wordy, but it was an exercise science degree. It's non-teaching though. I was in the physical education department. I couldn't be, I'd have to do extra work to be a teacher.
Yeah. Okay. So did you what? Because like you mentioned, and I think a lot of us can relate. It's like you go to college and it's like I just want to play sports, right? But obviously you gotta take the classes. That's obviously part of it. But did you, once you kind of realize like, hey, like I can actually go to school to be a strength and conditioning coach, and once you kind of, and we all got to take the gen ed classes, the math classes, which that's just part of it. But once you kind of got into the actual exercise science, kinesiology type classes, did you really find a lot of interest in that, and did you really start to maybe enjoy school a little bit more or not?
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting classes. I can't say that all of them were quite as interesting, but yeah, I got interested in even my dad, and parents, like one of my advisor, I think the guy that kind of was more alongside of the strength and conditioning realm, he said like, hey, you're going to have to go get a master's in order to really be strength coach, which I was like, like that's the last thing I want to do is like go to more school. And luckily I didn't have to take the GRE, and there were classes that I enjoyed, and my dad actually thought it was interesting that I was kind of excited about taking some classes or going to a strength and conditioning clinic for like 3 days and listening to people talk about it. Right. So, yeah, it got pretty interesting to me for sure. And now there was some real science-y classes, exercise physiology that I don't know that anybody enjoys maybe, but like
I did.
So, I'm not going to say that I didn't have my struggles there through some grad school and that, but there was a lot of fun. It was good stuff. I enjoyed actually kind of doing some research and writing some papers as I got into the master's classes. That was kind of fun.
Yeah. So let's touch on a little bit going to get your master's degree, because I got my BS in exercise science, and to think about, and I've thought about many times going to get a master's degree, but anymore, unless you're doing something very specific, I don't even think it's really that necessary. But that's another conversation. But I have so much respect for people that go get a master's degree, because all I've ever heard is like, it's a step up from getting your bachelor's degree, and then people that go on and get a doctorate. I'm just like there's levels of that education, right? So for you, Josh, just talk a little bit about getting that master's degree. Was it quite a few steps up from the undergraduate degree, and just talk a little bit about that experience?
I guess the big difference with the master's degree as opposed to the bachelor's is you're not in class as much. You only take 9 hours, but the assignments and the amount of time that you have to do. Like I just remember every class you had like a presentation at the end. I mean, you had a decent sized paper, 5 to 10 pages. You had to do obviously the bibliography and all the citations and that. You just had to dig through a bunch of research, and then you had to stand up in front of class and present, which for me was, at the time, I did not like to do. Obviously, constantly being exposed to it helped me out. Now I can talk in front of people and make jokes. It's fine. I don't mind it. But yeah, I mean, that's just what I remember. There's a lot of research to it. There's just a lot of like outside of the class work on top of you got to work. And you got to be a grad assistant. I helped out in the weight room, so there was other, stuff. So you just, you're not in class as much, but there's the hours outside of class, and they're not going to hold your hand as much. The professor is going to be like, okay, here's A. Now you got to find B, C, D. And think on your own, and then you're going to sit there with your other classmates going, what do we do? It's like, well. And then like come to think, well, it's like you can't do everything. Like you got to think for yourself.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what it's teaching you to do. It's like, all right, go think for yourself. Like go to the library. Like, figure it out.
Wait a minute, I have to go to the library. I have to actually study it.
That's the only place I could ever do it. I had to put myself in a corner and look at the wall. Yeah.
I'm with you, man. Yeah, get kind of like you got to get fully focused.
Put some blinders on. Yeah, that was really before cell phones became like a computer. So if it was now, then I would have to leave my cell phone in my dorm, and I could. Yeah.
Different times, man. It's like, and we're not even that old, but it's like I think about I graduated from undergraduate in 2010. It's like, dude, so it's 10 years since I graduated college. It's like I think back on like when I graduated college, like I didn't even have I didn't have a smartphone. You know what I mean? Like like it's just in a decade, Josh, like there's technology-wise, so much has changed. I mean, now, the online classes were just at University of Sioux Falls where I graduated, were just starting to be offered a little bit. I never really took them because I'd rather be in person. But now it's like, and I'm thankful because of the current, world events we're living in now. Like it's great that we can do the online stuff. But I just think about even like college, like, everything can basically be online now. We've got the smartphones, which it's just a little laptop in or a little computer in our hands. Like so much has changed just in a few years. You know what I mean? It's mind-boggling because like when I was at like my freshman year in college, Central is like, if you're gonna study and you got to do research, like you go to a computer lab or you go to the library. It's like, you don't have to do that stuff no more. Like I don't even know if you go on college campuses if they even have computer labs anymore. But they were like all over at Central, and now you just got your phone and laptops. So it's kind of crazy. Now, something I do want to touch on, and this is more just for maybe somebody that's going to listen to this and can kind of maybe relate to this. You mentioned earlier in our conversation, kind of at the beginning, Josh, like. You kind of are more of an introvert naturally, right?
Yep.
And then you kind of talked about being a strength coach. You kind of almost have to get into character. And then you kind of just mentioned talking about your master's degree. You have to do more presentations, and that was kind of tough for you. And you hear this thing of like one of the greatest fears that people have isn't dying, but it's actually public speaking, right? Yep. So just talk a little bit about how you've maybe grown, matured, and worked through. Saying, okay, like, yes, I'm naturally introverted. I'm okay just, doing my own thing. But, in the professional world that you're in, like, you've got to be in front of kids. You've got to be in front of, athletic directors and coaches and all this stuff. You have to be somewhat of a decent orator, right? Mm-hmm. So how have you been able to kind of, like, get into character, learn how to get into character? How have you learned to kind of overcome some of those fears that maybe you've had in the past so that you can be in the position you're in today?
I think a lot of it was just being exposed to those situations. Now, when my first job out of college, I was an intern with the Colorado Rockies, so I was with the minor league baseball team. Yeah. But I had to move to Arizona for spring training, and I didn't know anybody. So now, obviously, you kind of, when you're always around the, in the comforts of your own. You and I, for me, was 40 minutes away. I knew people there. I roomed with a kid that I, grew up with on the same street. So you're always in there. You always kind of, there's always a comfort level. Now when you're thrown into, being half a country away from home, now you got to talk and you got to kind of be your own person and settle into it. So there was different experiences there, and now you got a lead stretch, and you've got to memorize the whole thing. And I remember one time I made 2 trips with the big league team in Colorado in the spring training, and there, you're out there leading stretch with a bunch of guys that make $1 million, and you just got to let it rip. And the crazy thing was, I think by about the 3rd stretch out there, nobody was listening or paying attention because they kind of just do their own thing there. But I was just getting, my job, I felt like, was just put on the best stretch I could ever do, and I was excited to be with the big league team. But just being constantly kind of put in those situations where like I had to go move here, and I don't know anybody, and now then I did an internship at Florida Atlantic, and so now I'm down there and I don't know anyone, or and I kind of work with the Cardinals, so it kind of helps you, like you got to kind of discover who you are, and that kind of helped me develop a little bit more confidence, and then you kind of get into those situations, and now you can start hey, I messed up, big deal, so now you can just kind of you can do your stretch, and then it's kind of turns into a comedic routine, and maybe you're the only one laughing, but at least it makes your day go by a little bit faster. So
cool. That's something I think is going back to seeing how kids have kind of changed over the years. I know that's something I've noticed just being around kids as a public educator, is like the kids for the most part nowadays, like they don't even they don't make eye contact, right? Like they're always, if they have their phone, they're going to be on their phone trying to communicate. If they don't have their phone, like they're literally like looking down at the floor, and it's like they don't even know how to look in somebody's eyes and like just talk, right? And that's something I've noticed, just like head down, either it's at the phone or it's on the ground, because that's just, it's this comfort thing, right? Because like looking another man or another woman in the eyes, like sometimes that can be, especially if maybe you're in trouble or you're being reprimanded or what have you, that can be kind of an uncomfortable, type of a communication. So that's just something that I've even noticed, like with the kids. So just even being able to instill that within, this next generation, the student athletes, of like, hey, like, at some point your athletic career is going to be over. Especially when you're at a Division III program, like you're probably not going to go anywhere after this. You need to be able to walk into an interview, give somebody a firm handshake, and look them in the eye. And when they're asking you questions, you need to be able to make that eye contact and just, be able to talk, right? And not stutter and not like say a million times. So just some of those things, I think it's important, and that's why I appreciate you kind of touched on that a little bit, because a lot of people do struggle with getting up in front of other people and talking and communicating. If you're going to be any type of teacher or coach, like you're going to have to learn to do it. So I appreciate that perspective of like, hey, maybe just putting yourself in some of those uncomfortable situations, and we're all going to fumble over our words at times. We're all going to maybe misspeak or something like that. But the more you do something, just like anything else, like you're going to get better, right? So exactly. I appreciate that insight, Josh. Now, let's. I want to. So you've mentioned some different stops in terms of strength and conditioning. So I kind of want to just spend the rest of our conversation really digging into the nuts and bolts of strength and conditioning. So. And I've got some like more specific questions in terms of maybe like your coaching philosophy and things like that. But just talk about some of those kind of in order. So you graduated from UNI, you got your master's degree. So just kind of touch on the different stops that you had as a strength and conditioning coach after you were done with college.
So I did an internship with the Rockies. That was my first really job out of college. I got that before I did my finished up my master's.
Oh, okay, great.
I had to come back after the season in September and finish up my master's degree there. Really, the coursework and the paper I did, kind of like a project or a big, something or whatever. Let's see. Then I went down and did an internship at Florida Atlantic. It got done in May, stuck down there because I started working like in a little bit of personal training, kind of an upstart business. We were kind of training some athletes, training some regular people, kind of trying to find my way a little bit. Knew the St. Louis Cardinals were down there. Been a big fan ever since my dad was a huge fan. big fan. So I knew that the training facility was down in Jupiter. I went to go meet with the coordinator who was down there, and luckily they had a spot open. It was in AA, which is 2 steps from the big leagues. This was about the time that they kind of started to get more full-time positions, started, those coaches, were becoming regular in minor league baseball. Like they were just kind of what I was, like an intern, and you made like $1,200 a month and got some meals and whatnot. So I did that for 4 years, was at the same spot. Got to be with the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals right now. He was my manager for 3 years down there. It was a great working environment. I enjoyed it. A lot of what I learned there was in-season training. And they play minor league baseball plays 140 games in 150 days ish. You're always in season. So what?
For sure.
There was also some resistance from some front office and guys, old school guys that had been in baseball. They didn't think strength and conditioning was important. They thought it was causing a lot of injuries. It wasn't the fact that the seasons have been getting longer,
right.
Or the fact that kids at maybe 10 or 12 years old are playing 100 and some games every year. But no, it's the strength and conditioning, which maybe, if applied in a not so scientific and practical way, could potentially do that. But so that was tough too, coming in there. I mean, it's like you were trying to make a living and trying to make a difference, and then you got people like saying, "Hey, you're the reason why we're losing, why we're not." So you had to understand that like the most important thing they did was play baseball, and that was how they got better. And they did a lot of it, and you just had to kind of keep those guys healthy and fresh, and that was your main focus for the season. And gradually, as I got in there for 4 years, the schedule really didn't change. So I kind of knew like, hey, when we were going to have like big travel days, and that was going to take a lot out of the guys. So I could kind of be like, all right, look, we can push here, we can take away here. So that in of itself kind of, allowed for me to gain some knowledge in season, in recovery, and to know that, hey, playing their sports, that's where they, become the best at playing their sport. So after that, I wanted to obviously get into football and get into collegiate strength and conditioning. I was an assistant football coach at Buena University, D2 in North Carolina.
Awesome. Real
Real small town there, so it was like, coming back from, going to home, there just wasn't much to do around there. But that was my chance to like actually train people in the off season and get them, like, hey, I had like 6-7 weeks before spring break to get, get them going in that. And that was a lot of fun. There was, and again, there, it was a completely different atmosphere, and like the area and the kids were, had different upbringings than I did, and I just, kind of learned to, again, like I talked about earlier, with kind of building culture and just being there for those guys. And they were great kids. They worked hard, and as long as they knew that you were there for them, they would run through a brick wall. I mean, there was, trust me, when you're in strength and conditioning, sometimes you kind of overtrain kids, or you got to see where their breaking point is, and there's a lot of maybe some dumb stuff that I've done that they did it, and I'm like, all right, I know not to do that now, but it was at their expense. But we had some successful seasons. We had 3 winning seasons in 4 years that I was there. And previously they'd only had 1. They were kind of an upstart D2, so they'd only been D2 for about 10 years. So I mean that was just a good way to just learn, like putting together a whole entire program. But again, for 8 years I'd only had 1 sport at a time. Kind of wanted to get back to Iowa. Challenge myself with being the only coach for a wide amount of teams. I kind of heard some guy, like from some of the older strength coaches like Joe Ken and like Buddy Morris and Mickey Marotti there at Ohio State was like, hey, it was tougher back in our day. We had to stand on feet and coach all, and you had track, you had football, you had baseball. Like now it's easy. But you kind of have to earn your stripes by doing all that just so you can be in football. Now nobody has to do that anymore. So I was like, all right, let me take on this challenge. I mean, it's a tremendous challenge being the only guy there and having maybe a student assistant or an intern to help you out. But it definitely, you learn a lot about training, and now I'm working with males and females too, so that's another learning aspect about it.
now, because you mentioned about being with the Rockies organization and the Cardinals organization within professional baseball, and kind of like learning how to train professional athletes kind of within their season, and then going to the college and focusing more on football. What do you personally, Josh, enjoy more? Do you kind of enjoy being able to prep those athletes maybe for their spring practice or their spring training, and then maybe going in the summer training, or do you kind of like the in-season stuff? Is there something that you kind of enjoy more? Because I can kind of see where it's like, when you're just trying to like almost protect the athlete and not get them injured. Like, to me, that would get kind of monotonous and boring. Mm-hmm. Kind of like being able to train an athlete, let's say for, spring practice or, fall camp or something. That's a little bit more fun, I would think, because you can really push them hard, in the summer. Do you kind of have a preference, or do you kind of like all of it?
No, I would say the funnest time or most fun time to train the athletes is in the summer. Yeah. And for the football season, because it's right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So one, they don't have any school, so most of them work. You got to kind of work around their schedule, but it's not like they can say like, well, I got to go to class at 6 a.m. Well, we can be here a little longer. I mean, there's you only get 8 hours, but so that's the most fun. You've kind of you're trying to do. One, you're trying to get them to be very powerful. Speed is of the essence, and you get to be outside too. Like you get to do so like the running takes precedent, and that's what I generally focus on with football guys in the summer is speed, that first June period, and conditioning there, and that's it's a lot of fun to work some contrast training and things like that to get them truly like powerful and ready for the season.
For sure.
You can definitely tell that there's another level of focus, and like, hey, I don't have anything else to do. I just go work, and I don't have to worry about a test tomorrow or certain assignments or things like that. There's not as much stress for them, which means that they can recover a little bit better, and there's more focus on training. So
now, BV, Buena Vista University, where you're at right now. It sounds like this is the first time you've kind of had, like you've been like the head guy over all sports. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, what's that? What's this experience kind of been like? Because you said you kind of want to take on that challenge. What's the experience been like? Kind of being in charge of like all athletic performance, all of the teams in terms of training them and things like that. What's that experience been like? And then, what's some things that you've learned that maybe, you don't think you probably would have learned if you would have stayed, at your previous stops in terms of maybe more focusing on just one sports team. So what's the experience been like, and what are some things that you've learned over this like last year and a half in this position?
Yeah, the whole thing has been a learning experience. I hadn't coached female athletes in 9 or 10 years since Florida Atlantic when I was there, and so I was a little apprehensive at first, to kind of try to push them or like be vocal with them around them, even some of their coaches, it's like, hey, you're a guy that they're going to respond to whatever you do. So now I'll push them, just like football or whatnot. And obviously, the language is. Got to clean up a little bit, but out of respect, more or less. But I mean, the training programs, I would guess to say it doesn't really train a whole lot. I mean, I think most athletics need to be strong. Absolutely. They got to be fast. They got to be durable. They play a lot of games. So the X's and O's of the strength and conditioning, more or less, it's some of the learning comes to, and the challenge comes from the how you coach them, and like how much they value the weight room. I guess sometimes in season like football's pretty regimented. Some of these other sports they play during the week. Like basketball plays 2-3 times a week. Baseball, softball, they might have a midweek game, so it's tougher to get them in. So sometimes you always kind of feel like you're always just restarting them up again because like you might have not have seen him for a week or two, and then it's like, oh, we got to kind of pull back because I can't get him sore for Saturday, So during season is a challenge in there, and another thing too, you have more personalities to deal with the players and the coaches.
Yeah.
You know, and like now instead of just dealing with one head coach, you've got like 10, and
Yeah.
you know, like I'm there to kind of help them all out, but there is like 10 extra people now that you have to, you know, kind of work with, and you know, being like introverted like that, you know, it's just like that's a lot more conversations that you have to handle. So sometimes it's, you know, it gets to be a little overwhelming, and
For sure, yeah.
and then, you know, there's different times and different teams. So at 3:00 you got football, and at 4:00 you got women's soccer, and then you got men's soccer at 5, and then golf at 5:30, and then maybe softball's coming at 6, and they're in season. So you're like, okay, I got out of season training. It's like here, and that. Sometimes you kind of like you got to remember what they're all doing and what phase that they're all in. So really, with the programming, you got to keep it easy. You got to keep it simple, you know, and just, you know, they're like, all right, okay, they just got done practicing right now, so they're going to be a little tired. They're, you know, they're not going to be like football was at 3. They don't have anything else to do.
Right.
So there's just all those aspects of juggling that in a, you know, 4-hour time period.
Yeah. I can see why the kind of the season of life we're all in right now with COVID-19, it's kind of been nice for you just to kind of take a step back and be like, dude, I can kind of work out when I want to work out. I can have my meals when I want to have my meals, and just, you know, enjoy time, you know, with my significant other and all that stuff. Because like, you know, just that's the type of stuff that, you know, even as an athlete, you know, referring to myself, like you don't see all the behind the curtains, all the happenings in terms of the strength coach. Like when you're a football player, you come in and because you are a football player, you know, a lot of times you are kind of the big man on campus in terms of college campuses. But you know, it's like everybody's kind of catering to you. But it's like, man, like when you're in a situation like at a D3 school like Central, BV, and there's one strength coach, like it's like there's a lot that goes into it, huh? There
is a lot that goes in, and sometimes you feel like you're just facilitating, you know, the workout so they get in and out at a timely manner, because you have to get so many kids through, rather than actually coaching like some technique. And then, you know, you're looking over there like, man, that squat technique's not very good. He's going a little too heavy.
Yeah.
You know, where I want it to be a little faster, and I want to, you know, so some of those things do get a little in the chaos of the day, you know, because you might have a 6 a.m. and then, you know, wrestling comes in at 6:45. So hopefully there's somebody out there that can, you know, they can stretch themselves. They can report like, hey, was there anybody late? You know, like who's just strolling in, who's not. Obviously, go back to dress correctly. And now sometimes those kids have to police themselves a little bit too. So that therein lies the challenge. Like, hey, I gotta keep this workout flowing so that way we can be off the platforms, because then wrestling is going to use them to deadlift, and then you've got to be over there on the dumbbells for assistance, and you know, and then obviously when there's transition of teams, you've got to, you know, that's when, you know, people are going to be social, so then they're going to socialize with their friends on campus, and they're like, no, we're trying to get some work done, you got to get to a certain spot. So these are all things that you just stress about as a coach, and you're, like I said, you know, go back to the beginning, like you're always looking at your watch, like, all right, well, we got 15 minutes to get our squats in before somebody else needs these, and so that it's just you got to be organized, and you got to, you know, just make sure that kids are, you know, stay on task.
Now, here at BV, do you have like an assistant, or do you just have like some student interns? How does that
look like? I have some student interns.
Okay,
you know, there's kids that do internship. We have a J term like in January, so there's like a 3-week class that I'll have a few, and kind of try to get them up to speed, and then we can kind of divide up the platforms. I have a student assistant that he's not doing an internship, but he has taken some teams. He took my class. I taught a class in the fall.
Cool, awesome.
He played football, really into strength and conditioning, smart kid, trains a lot hard, and he was able to kind of take those teams over, and he was going to kind of run with his own programming after spring break. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but so that kind of is I'm able to at 3 keep football maybe a little longer or whatnot, so he can take them and warm them up, and now I should be out there by the time he's in. And we, so that's that's always good to have some free help.
Yeah,
I guess.
Sure.
You know,
yeah, that's me, and I'm just thinking about it though, because like I mean, even having like a student intern, like it's I mean, they don't have the full education, they don't have the experiences like you.
Yeah.
I know at Central, I mean Central, and this is 11, 12, 13 years ago. I mean they were way ahead of the time for Division III. Like Coach Anderson had an awesome assistants, and I mean when we came in, like I mean there was a team, right? You know what I mean? Because like I'm just thinking like with you and all the things that you have going on your plate, and you have a few like students helping you out, like man, like sometimes like you said, like that kid over there is like maybe squatting too heavy, so sometimes I think like even like that technique, you probably can't take that time that you would like to take with some of these athletes to train them, right?
Yeah, but that would definitely be something I would like to it'd be a lot nicer just to have a couple people per squat rack.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So my job right now is to, get those older guys, because they have their certain lifting platform, their groups that they're with.
Yep.
I'd like to put, like an older guy that's been around, right, leader. And one thing we're developing some good leaders here within the program for football and everybody too, but they're doing a really good job of coaching each other up. Awesome. And giving some cues and knowing like, hey, squat down a little lower, like that's.
Yep.
So, that's what I have to do is just, all right, we break it down that first week, how we're going to, different focal points in that on what I like to see. And then, all right, the older guys now, you got to bring these younger guys up to speed, and there might be some younger freshmen that are really talented, and we have a really good upperclassmen. It's like, all right, whatever he does, you do that.
For sure.
And
yep.
Some of the upperclassmen, one of them was kind of like, well, Coach, why am I not over there with the other guys that, he knows he wants to lift with, and they'll push him? I'm like, well, you've got to coach these three guys up to be like you. It's now it's like you got to push yourself, but you also got to coach these. You took my class. You had a really great year. You're a great player. Now make sure that these kids are doing what you do, because he's very diligent. He gets out there, he's, logging his numbers.
Awesome,
he's, and it's like, all right, teach them.
Yep,
he needs to be like you next semester,
sure.
Next fall. So I have to create coaches amongst themselves, and that, kind of takes some ownership of themselves. And, like when athletes, when the players run the team themselves and they know the standard and they can implement that, like, hey, some guy comes in wearing a Central t-shirt or a red shirt that looks like Central, you're like, everybody's like, jumps on him. No.
Absolutely.
No, you go change. Absolutely. And I don't have to say it. I can just be like, all right, good. That's when you know that the culture is there. And we're starting to get there,
Yeah. And that's, excuse me, that's great, because that, what you're developing there in the weight room in terms of that leadership, that's only going to show up, more powerfully on the football field or on the basketball court, right? Because I know that's how it was at Central. Like, you come in as a freshman, you're at the bottom. It doesn't matter if you're a stud or not. Like, you're a freshman. But they just had it, and this was in the weight room, this was on the football field, but it was just set up in a way where it's like, there's that seniority. Like, the seniors basically they ran the team, so to speak, right? Because the strength coach isn't always there, the head football coach isn't always there, the linebackers coach isn't always there. So the seniors, they did a great job of cultivating that senior leadership. And it's like, even like if one of us freshmen did something stupid, over the weekend or something, like, usually it was like a senior or a group of seniors that would come and say, hey, that's not how we do it here at Central. And it's either like you get in line or something's going to happen. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really great that you're developing that, Josh, because again, especially like at D3, some of these lower divisions, like, yes, they're there playing sports, but the reality is like it's the education and it's really the development of the human being and what they're going to become post college. So touching on that, I want you to talk a little bit about that, because again, it is, I know like when we're in the strength and we're coaching, and it's, we're really focused on, kind of like the physical aspect things, the performance on the field. But at the end of the day, all of the athletics is going to end for all of us, right? And we really want to try to develop, impactful human beings, impactful, young men and women. So do you ever think about that? And if so, how do you try to maybe incorporate that in terms of like, this is going beyond the weight room, this is going beyond the practice field. We really want to develop, great human beings, great assets to society. Like, do you ever think about that stuff? How do you kind of tie that into your coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that. I think that's, kind of in coaching, that's a lot of, ultimately that's what you're trying to teach with the habits that you're doing. Absolutely. It's like, hopefully they can, because that's kind of what shaped, both of us. I mean, I guess college athletics is it's demanding, like they demand a lot of time out of you. And then you have to go study, when you're tired after practice. And then so hopefully you tell these kids like, hey, dude, when you go get a job and you have to work 8 to 5, like you're going to be like, oh, I got so much free time. I don't know what to do. And so, hopefully that, they can take some of those things, what you're trying to teach, and instill like, in that just goes by just trying to teach those habits of 5 minutes early,
Absolutely.
Like, hey, if this was a job, you get fired.
Yep.
Like if you show up late, you're not going to have one. And then, do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? Well, that goes by providing for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, then that's some more area I like to get better at. But I do think that, if you constantly follow that routine and you have high expectations, and that it will carry over into those, that other aspect of life.
Of course. Going
forward, like, hey, I can't, I got to be in bed early. We got an early morning workout, 6 a.m. It's Thursday night. I got a Friday 6 a.m. workout. I can't be out on the town until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So those certain disciplines should carry over.
Of course. Okay, so we're coming up on going for almost an hour and a half, so we're going to start wrapping things up here. But I do want to really just kind of touch on kind of like your philosophy. You mentioned earlier just really kind of keeping things basic and simple, right? Mm-hmm. But just over your years of experience, through your education, all of the strength and conditioning that you've had, Josh, kind of like, where are you at? Just like an overall philosophy in terms of like, and I understand, there's the in season, there's that out of season, but the overall philosophy, what do you kind of have in terms of strength and conditioning and training athletes? Well,
it's just, I mean, the philosophy is just, it's ever evolving. Like I listen to, some certain podcasts and everybody's always, there's always something out there that you can pick up, or some small take that you can do, and that changes with what team you have as well. I mean, when I first got to BV, there wasn't too many upperclassmen. We had a lot of younger guys. Now, as we continue to get older, our training has to somewhat change. That was for football. Baseball was a lot more older guys. You can start to kind of do some different things. So, man, what I'm going to do is, we're always going to stand on our feet, for training. Not always, but mostly we're going to do obviously multi-joint, big core lifts, like, squat and bench, and either deadlift or clean, depending on the, if they can do that, the team or not. Basically, baseball, I'm not going to do that with them, but we're going to sprint, we're going to jump, we're going to throw med balls, and try to develop explosive power and things like that. So we're always just going to work the big, work the body as a total body.
Now in terms of kind of like, is there kind of like, how do you kind of break up like the different like phases of the training? Is it really, do you kind of like base the type of training that you're gonna do? Is it solely based off of like kind of like what season a team is in, or kind of like how do you like create the different phases of the training? Is it kind of just based off like what season the teams are in, of the athletes?
Yeah, so if we would take a football athlete whose season starts in August, what we do is from January until spring break, that's more of like, let's lean body mass, let's add some muscle mass. We'll focus on some strength in numbers as we continue to kind of put on some size. Some guys need to lean out, we'll lean out. So that the weight room is probably emphasized the most right there in terms of like a total, a squat, bench, and a clean.
Right.
Okay, and there's different subgroups that they can be based on their total that they can be. Right. Then they kind of go after spring break to the end of the semester there. They'll be in spring ball now. It's a little bit more. In D2 it was a little bit more rigorous because we got to practice with pads and actually have live contact and stuff. Here it's not so much. So we can still go, and I don't have to pull back as much. But I would focus on power development there. And we'll do some contrast training. We'll focus on speed. In their vertical jump, and we'll kind of test some of that. So I have a vertical jump match, which is great. Now we can go do a heavy squat, come over there, and now they can get some, instantaneous feedback from that and see like, hey, we can take advantage of some potentiation in that. When they go into the summer, our main emphasis is to get them football, get them ready for conditioned, get them ready for practice. And I think a lot of people want to get ready for like a football game or sport specific, but they got to be able to tolerate those weeks of practice more or less too. So they have to be in shape to practice first, and practice will get them in shape for the game. So that's where we emphasize, not saying that we don't condition here. Right. Before spring, it's just like, hey, I don't need them to be like running the same test that we would before when they report to camp.
Right.
If I can be about 50 to 75% there, because we're emphasizing the weight room, and then our jumps and our sprint and our speed development, and and that after spring break to when they leave is the most important there. And we're probably not going to hit any rep maxes or the such there with lifting, but we'll use some contrast training, and that's kind of fun in a sense that the kids can see how far they broad jump, how high they vertical jump, and try to harness, get them more powerful in that aspect. So
cool.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to bring up with you. I know. I think it was like last year, a couple of years ago, there was an incident. I believe it was at the University of Maryland where one of the football players, like in training, passed away, and I think it kind of went back onto the strength and conditioning coach and all of that. How do you kind of navigate? Because obviously you really want to push the kids hard and stuff, but then there's a point where you can push too far. How do you kind of navigate that? Do you kind of like work pretty closely with and obviously specifically here at BV, but do you kind of work pretty closely like with the athletic training team, like kind of in that summer conditioning, and when you're really kind of pushing the kids? How do you kind of like try to find that balance of like, okay, here's the line, I can kind of push them here, but I can't really push them past that line, and you and I know that, again, just like a lot of other things, all of that has changed a lot over the years. I even look back, my freshman year in college, like our conditioning going into football camp, and in high school, some of the things we did, and even things I've just done personally, I'm like, dude, like you gotta, quote unquote, suck it up. But then kind of now in the softer world that we're living in, you've got to kind of pull back the reins, so to speak. Yeah. So how do you kind of navigate that?
You just have to, know the kid a lot of times, and like who maybe be out there, be pushing a little hard and things like that. So you got to know your athletes there. Right, yeah. One thing too is know if they have any, know some of their background and history. If a kid has asthma or something, you better have his inhaler out there, or the AT better have that. Yeah. So those are kind of things that you got to know. And that a lot of times the athletic trainers, they'll have certain guidelines as far as what the heat is for that day. Okay. Or I know it's a lot more you know, like in North Carolina, I don't know, they have some app on their phone that kind of takes the humidity and and the humidity and that. So it's like, hey, you can only be out there for 30 minutes, you got an hour. So if that would ever be the case, they would let me know the day beforehand to be like, hey, maybe probably best to do your run it early in the morning. Cool. So, you know, in practice, we wouldn't, practice in the afternoons. We'd have to practice in the morning or whatnot. So, you know, you try to give the kids before they even come. You usually, hey, you got to be hydrated. All right, we got to eat something. Like I've had conditioning workouts at 3:00. Kid maybe had a peanut butter and jelly the whole day, and then he's over there laying and wondering why. So you got to just educate them on putting fuel in their body so they can always be at a high level and getting those electrolytes in, and that's not just sodium, potassium, eat bananas, salt your food.
Absolutely.
I think kind of a stigma with people is like high sodium, but if you're an athlete and you're out there, we were in humid conditions in baseball in North Carolina. I mean, you're just walking outside sweating. You're always sweating, so you need that extra sodium. So
absolutely, and especially even here in the Midwest. You get into June, July, August, like the humidity, Storm Lake, the lake, it gets nasty.
So usually the trainers are pretty good, and they have that data there that allows you to be like, I think there was once or twice last year where we had some conditioning and it was up in the 90s, and they just kind of say, hey, that's when you give them a little bit extra break. You might take a timeout, get some water for 3 minutes, come back. You gotta. It's kind of a learning experience. I don't want to say like you're out there, learning on the fly, but you just got to know your guys and know like, all right, where's my dogs that crushed conditioning are in great shape. If they're struggling a little bit, like, all right, everybody else can be struggling too. Sure. So you got to have your indicator people that you can kind of base the workout off, and they're like, all right, if they're kind of dying here, I better get, that's it. So
take a you gotta chill a little bit, right?
Yep.
even though in our mind it's just like, man, that's the thing for me. We're working with younger people. It's like, because I really take my own training very serious in my eating, and I've pushed myself really hard, and it's like, sometimes with kids, even like within a PE class, like I was at Colorado Military Academy, it's like kids are like, I'd make them run a lot, because it's like I just feel like a lot of kids nowadays, like they just need to sweat, Josh. Like they just need to learn that they can push themselves mentally and physically so much further than they think. And so even like with it, I know it's PE class, it's not like strength and conditioning in the sense of like what you're doing, but still it's like I just wanted to at least say like we're going to do some sprints just so you can feel like your heart beating, you're breathing hard, like you're not going to die. Like you're okay. But even then it's just like, you get all kinds of kids like, oh, I've got asthma. All of a sudden it's like, we never told me you had asthma until we started running. You get parents, man. I joke all the time, Josh, I'm like, as a teacher, I got called in the principal's office more than as a student. Man, I was like, Mr. Vars, did you do that? I'm like, yeah, but like these kids need to learn how to work hard a little bit. So I know for me that's where it's like, even like as a personal trainer, I was my last school before I stepped away. I had a high school strength and conditioning class. So it's like it's like, man, like my mindset's always like, well, I can do that or I've done that, but it's like you've got to kind of like detach yourself from like what you do and what you put yourself through, and say, hey, like this kid maybe was up all night studying or something, and just have a little bit of compassion, right? And that's always just kind of hard for me. But okay, just a couple more things here, and then we're gonna finish up. I want to talk a little bit. I was kind of on your Facebook and stuff, and it looked like you do like some strongman stuff. So for you, kind of moving away from what you do professionally, like what type of training do you like to do for just yourself? And then like maybe just talk on some of the strongman stuff that you've competed in, and just kind of where you're at with all that.
Okay, I began actually in powerlifting about 8 years ago. One of my friends from Florida Atlantic, we were still down in Florida, and he's like, hey, you want to do a powerlifting meet? So I was like, yeah, sure. And for me, there was always like, I like the competition, and like when you're done playing high school or college sports too, you're always looking for that. And for me, it was lifting, but then it was always like with myself. And then when I signed up for powerlifting, I immediately got like so much stronger because I was like, well, now there's going to be other, like it goes on like on record, like, like there's going to be other people there. So I got into that, obviously the competitive bug bit, and now, like it's a never ending quest to get stronger. It also helps me coach my athletes because I'm competing. I know it's going through my mind, and it's a good hobby to have too, that I can just kind of get in there and do for yourself and kind of coach yourself up, and now you have to go through some of those struggles that you're pushing your kids through. Yeah. And then once I got to here, powerlifting, it was fun, but it's 3 lifts. You're just so you're always just standing there, and then you kind of found some strongman. Like, oh, he's moving around, he's being an athlete again. I got to jump on a bog, carry sandbags, walk with farmers and stuff. So I did my first competition when I first got here. I think that was back in 2019.
Okay,
and I've done about 5 or 6.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's just been an absolute blast. I mean, there's I follow Jim Wendler's a lot of his programs. One that he's got out there, Born But Big Now. So I'm trying to get gain some muscle mass in that, but. There's certain little things that I do with strongman, certain events. I got some Atlas stones, which, it looks cool too, you got like these big cement balls that you're picking up, a sandbag so it's a lot of fun, and it's just, it's a cool hobby, and it's something that keeps a competitive itch.
For sure, yeah.
That, being in team sports and, football, I obviously, and in coaching, like, you care the most. And sometimes maybe the athletes don't care as much as you, so a loss stings with you through the whole weekend, to where maybe like the bus ride for them it only does. But now it's like I'm the only one that my training affects, and I it kind of goes back to extreme ownership. My training matter. Like the only person that's responsible for me getting beat is me, and that's it. Right. And that's kind of cool to have that control, because when I, if I get my butt whooped like I did a couple months ago, it's like, all right, now you got to go back to the drawing board. Now there's nobody else to blame. It's just you.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's fun.
Cool. Yeah, and I just think having a strength and conditioning coach, or any type of coach or adult figure, whatever they're preaching or trying to teach or share with others, especially younger kids, I think it's just those words are heard a lot more powerfully when their actions back it up, right? So when you're like, hey, the kids can get on your Facebook or social media and see Coach Q competing this last weekend in a competition, like, then your words on Monday, when you're maybe chewing somebody out or getting after them or trying to kind of get them jacked up for a training session, like, they're going to say, hey, coach was, gone all weekend. He was training, like, he's putting in the work. He's eating, like, he's doing what he's trying to get us to do. Like, anything in life, like, people just listen to people that are doing it and not just talking about it, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, you can relate a lot more. Like, you're out there, doing a set of 10 or 15 on squats. It sucks, and now they see you do that, they're like, all right, now,
cool.
I'll do it too.
Love it. Okay, so before I ask you kind of the last question here, Josh, where do you kind of want to go in terms of professionally as a strength and conditioning coach? Do you have like those aspirations of one day being back at like a D1 program and being like the head guy, let's say, over the football program? Do you just kind of enjoy working at the smaller school? Kind of professionally, like, what's your goal? What are your aspirations? Kind of like, where do you see yourself in the future?
I potentially, with all the what's going around now, that might kind of dictate what you want to do. But I don't know. I guess there's a few different routes I could go. The high school strength and conditioning route is cool. I mean, like, that's very interesting for those kids, and maybe like the military strength and conditioning as well. I mean, I know, that would be something for me that would kind of be nice just to give back, I guess, and kind of do your serve. Since I haven't, but it would kind of be to give back to the people that I've served for the country too. So, strength and conditioning I always kind of try to keep my options open, so to speak. I've looked into the private sector as well. Sometimes, the working of the long hours, you just kind of want to have a little bit more. If this thing has kind of taught me, like, free time is fun, it's nice, and being a strength coach, you always have to work around the kids' classes. So, doing something where I could potentially still work and train people, but have more free time and more money to and free time to enjoy that is something that you kind of look at. It's tough to, I guess, retire as a strength coach. Not a lot of people have done it. I know it's an infant kind of profession, but just long hours and that. So.
Yeah, it's a grind, man. Like I mentioned earlier, a friend of mine that we went to high school together in college, he's at Mississippi State, I know, and he's the top assistant now at Mississippi State, which, I'm so proud of him and happy for him. But like, a lot of people, the strength and conditioning profession, they don't last, man, because it's a grind. Like he's slept on friends' couches doing internships, not getting paid anything. Like, it's nuts, man. And he's been, I think this is his third SEC school. He was, like I said, Washington State, and it's just like, it is a grind. And again, like, I'm so proud of him because he's worked. His goal is to be, the head strength and conditioning coach, at a D1 school. He's a top assistant, which is amazing, right? But just like the financial grind, and just like, the day-to-day professional grind, like just his story. And I've, had different strength and conditioning coaches on the podcast and stuff, private sector and in, professional and collegiate sports. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, and that's the cool thing though with the undergraduate degree, the master's degree, your certification experience. There's going to be always, some options out there, which is great. You know what I mean? So, all right, Josh, I just kind of want to wrap up the conversation today. Excuse me, just kind of asking you, what kind of like when your time's up, right? Or maybe when you step away from strength and conditioning and you kind of enter into those retirement years, so to speak, you kind of look back, have some reflection time on your life. What's something that you, when somebody says, Coach Q or Josh Q, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to kind of be like, what, this is what I remember Coach about. This is kind of like, this is what Josh is all about.
I would say I want to be remembered by, I put a smile on somebody's face. Like they walk, they see you walking down the hall. They're like, they get excited to see you. They cool. Smile. My dad was a superintendent and educator for, he was superintendent for maybe 15 years, but an educator. And I know that, when I'd see him at school or even out away from school, like, his students, former students from a long time ago, like, they were happy to see him. Like, they,
for sure, yeah.
It was, which, for a principal of, a disciplinarian like that, not everybody really wants to. I know I wouldn't, if I saw my high school principal or superintendent, I wouldn't, be excited. People generally excited, and they, he put a smile on their face, and that's what I would say, that I want people, to know that, I helped them out.
Yeah. Course.
I was somebody they can always, come to for advice or just to help them out. But I made them feel good. And like when we went to the weight room, that was a fun time. And
cool. Yeah.
I think sometimes people, in the competitiveness and the win at all cost society, it's just nice to just, just have fun.
It is, for sure.
So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. If somebody wants to kind of, reach out to you, if maybe, a student or a younger person is listening to this, they want to find out maybe, kind of like what route they need to take to become a strength and conditioning coach. If maybe somebody's resonated in terms of a part of your story today, and if they just kind of want to reach out to you, where can people kind of find out more about you, Josh? Where can people find out more about Buena Vista University and kind of just everything that you have going on?
bvu.edu for Buena Vista. I know there's an athletics page as well. And then for me, my email address is just joshq@yahoo.com. Do that. And then joshq220 is my Instagram.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter and Facebook too, so I can't remember the Twitter.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I
Too
do.
much for me.
I got into it because we needed for recruiting for
Oh,
football,
yeah,
and then there's a few things.
Yeah.
There's some good with some bad, but I can't remember the handle. It might be Josh Q220 as well. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then your last name, it's spelled CUE.
CUE, yes.
Okay, all right.
Like
perfect.
a cue ball.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. So, Josh, I just want to thank you for inviting me into your home today, and I want to thank you for sharing your story. We've never connected before this, which that's kind of like how most of my podcast guests are. Just reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to have you on, and we kind of go from there. But thank you for inviting me into your home. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for taking time just to chop it up with me today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
For sure. All right. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you so much for your listening ears. They're always greatly appreciated. Thank you for hanging out with Josh and myself today on the 127 Fit podcast. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, or if you would like to find out more about myself personally, you can find that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be awesome. And if you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can just send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And just to kind of add on to what I just said, I've been living in Colorado. I'm currently in Iowa, so all of my podcasts, I do them in person. So if somebody that's listening to this is in Iowa, and again, if you think you'd be a great guest, or if you have a friend or acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the podcast, just reach out to me. But just know I'm currently in Iowa, and I do all the podcasts in person. So if you're listening to this and you're in Colorado, or you're in another state or somewhere else around the world, we got to do them in person. That's just kind of my jam. So one other thing that I would just ask of you guys in terms of the podcast, as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, in which I know you are, I would just ask that you would take the episode or episodes that you're finding that great value in and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. Then, per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.